so much for coming out here today. We're sitting, of course, in Toronto's Discovery District, which is a very concentrated square mile here of research institutions, hospitals, universities. And so I thought we'd just dig a little bit deeper today on biotech hubs, how we could learn a little bit more here from other biotech ecosystems, and have you share some advice for early stage entrepreneurs. So let's start with the basics. Could you give us a little bit of background on yourself and explain what the Novo Nordisk Bio Innovation Hub is?
I'm happy to, Maisha. So I'm Uli Stilz, heading up the Bio Innovation Hub for Novo Nordisk, which is based in Cambridge, so in the Boston ecosystem, which is at its core an R&D unit. So it's a cross-functional R&D team with mostly physician scientists, biologists, and chemists to think about modalities, which we brought into Cambridge, Boston with a deep cardiometabolic expertise to then work with entrepreneurs in this ecosystem to develop next generation ideas for therapeutic concepts, which we then want to support and drive towards proof points.
It seems like you've worked across a variety of innovation ecosystems. What would be your top 3 factors that create a biotech hub?
Most important as a starting point is strong basic science, either in basic science institution or in teaching hospitals. Is I think the first key foundation. The second is the talent pool and founders, right, who are entrepreneurial and want to push the boundary. And the third, I think, critical component is actually capital, right, and risk investors who are willing to put capital into at the early outset, unproven concepts, and then help to de-risk them by doing experiments. So I think an experimental mindset, but this experimental mindset, of course, needs to be supported with capital to do the experiments.
How can Canada be stronger in terms of that commercialization muscle? It seems like we've had great successes in terms of the basic science research. What would you say to today's entrepreneurs in order to push them a little bit more towards the commercialization aspect of biotech?
I think, of course, that has a number of elements. The first one, I would say to entrepreneurs, be led by science and entertain disruptive science. So don't focus on things which are already, mostly proven, but try to find new islands of real breakthrough could happen. And then have the experimental mindset to stepwise de-risk it and get to proof points. Can this actually be realized? But it also requires that the investor community goes along and supports those ventures and helps supporting truly transformative ideas and have the long view on it. Then I also would think, ecosystems can also benefit to invite the pharma companies into it, to help, especially thinking through what are real life unmet needs. And then those pharma companies being there also, helping on the early side to engage with this early science and help guiding it, to some extent also help funding it together with investors.
In Canada here, big pharma R&D is not as prevalent as it is in many other cities in the US. How do you see collaborations sort of cross borders as a result of that?
We look for, where is exciting new science and how can we engage with exciting new science. And so I don't think, it's necessary that also pharma companies are present with a lot of laboratories, but to invite them in for dialogues, right, and invite them in also for partnering discussions. And maybe there's one element for founders also to think about starting on a new idea in a new startup company. Okay, what are the parts of this journey I want to own, and that's my, portfolio asset I want to drive myself. And what do I also want to partner? And why do I partner, right? And why is a partnership helping me to build this company? So I think to be strategic about those reflections, I think is actually also important.
Yeah, the Bio Innovation Hub has been very unique in its model of approaching early stage biotech startups. And you've had some very creative partnerships with academia as well as early stage biotechs. What are some lessons and examples that you could share around structuring effective partnerships at that level?
This ecosystem in Boston, when I arrived in, was primarily focused on cancer and rare diseases, so diseases which were primarily genetically driven, and where in 2000, after we sequenced the human genome, there was a lot of insight, how to progress in those disease areas and also find smaller clinical trials in a specific way. So when we then came in, there was a question, okay, how can we engage? It's important to not only have one engagement model, but also be on this partnership side and how we work across entities, be creative. So that there's creativity both on the science side and on the business side. Academia and industry lacks a little bit enough energy in terms of here's an idea, it becomes tangible, how do we lift it out and start the translation journey? And we felt we did not always succeed in it because we funded some basic science, but then we didn't commit enough energy into it to guide it. So we created an accelerator structure, which we later called EN Square. And there we brought three components together. We brought academic institutions. So these academic institutions bring fundamentally exciting ideas which are at the verge of, let's say, crystallize and they can start a translation journey. Then we bring the cardiometabolic expertise and also we bring funding. And then we brought in biotech as a third partner to do experiments. It's a more industrial experience to find molecules, to validate targets or help validate targets. So to bring capabilities which are actually not present in academic labs. With those three elements, we feel like now we really can translate those early ideas and bring them towards the journey towards, and at the end, getting to proof points in humans.
So many founders struggle with access to capital, tech transfer, getting access to wet lab space, infrastructure. What are some supports that can help make it easier for them, the early stages?
I think, of course, we created a few engagement models to help early on. So we created an engagement model which we later called the co-creation greenhouse, where say, a founder comes with an early idea, and then we spend with them a week, basically taking them through a Google design sprint. What could be a real life problem which could be solved with it, and what would be stepwise experiments to de-risk it, and then we provide scientific guidance, but we also provide funding to a certain level, right, to go over 3-6 months to a certain proof point. So I think that was really intended to help this really, really young ideas to get to a point. And get to a certain proof point, so that they thereafter can attract more seed funding and start to get also to some of those incubators. We also work with, as a second example, with Lab Central right in the center of Cambridge, which is a place to incubate very young companies which have raised just a little bit seed funding. And there we do yearly, we give them what they call a golden ticket, right? So we fund this, and for a golden ticket, those who win it, they get a bench in this facility. And then they have an entry point, right? Because the facility actually provides all the infrastructure in terms of laboratory equipment, so that these young companies don't need to buy all this high-end equipment, but that this is centrally available, and then they can focus on the experiment. So I think across the US, there are structures like this, and you have plans here in Toronto to have these shared facilities for founders that they, with a lot less capital, can start to do experiments.
Yeah. From an outsider's perspective looking in, how can Canada be stronger at commercializing this research?
Usually it's important to first foster the early discovery, and then the first, de-risking steps to be very experimental. And then thereafter, oftentimes it's a very long journey. So now we talk about GLP-1. GLP-1 was discovered in 1987, so it's a 30-year journey. And I think that's important also to be willing actually to be it for a long time. So to have a capital market who is willing to support it for a long time before it can become commercialized. So it needs patience and also patient investors.
You've led drug development at Sanofi for about 20 years. As you work with early stage biotech entrepreneurs today, what are some lessons that you wish to share with them? I
started when I came out of academia. I felt like I was 10 years in training. And then I found out in my first years in a biopharma company, there's so much more to be learned. So it's a really interdisciplinary science where so many things have to be considered. So I think a larger organization, larger pharma company can actually be a really good training period to understand this many cross-functional activities, what it takes to advance a molecule, to define the translational journey, but also on the molecular side, how to design molecules which can actually be safe in humans. So it's where do we start, what target do we approach, how do we think about the biology, how do we get to safe and well-developed molecules, and how do we get to proof points. Those maybe are the three most important things to to learn all of this, and that, of course, what you have to have also in a biotech company.
So how do you decide which biotech companies to partner with? I can imagine there are a lot of companies that outreach to you on a weekly basis, and you talked a little bit about good science. How do you make that decision?
That's actually a really good question and not an easy answer, because we of course meet with companies and to envision the future. So we don't look at an asset which is already in the clinic with proof points, but we look at the emerging science and then to develop the imagination what could be. I think what is really important is to have a two-way street. One is we reach out to meet companies, but we also want, of course, this community to know the door is open to come to us. And then we take dialogues. Can we imagine how this could lead into the future?
Uli, thank you so much for coming out here today. Hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you for having me, Maisha. Pleasure to talk to you today.
Thank you.